All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the CV Update. We hope all of you enjoyed the 4th of July weekend, and we were off last weekend. And as usual, however, there were a lot of major sports events that have happened, including the Tampa Bay Lightning winning their second consecutive Stanley Cup. Thank you, Tom Brady. The European Championship final, which will be played today by Italy and England. The Wimbledon, which is ongoing today. The Red Sox continuing to play well. And of course, the NBA Finals taking place between the Phoenix Suns and Milwaukee Bucks, which will be the focus of today's episode, in addition to discussing the general status of the Boston Celtics. And joining me, as usual, is my co-host Rohan Venkatesh. And this marks the first time in almost a while that, I guess in a couple weeks, right? That's we've been back, Rohan. So welcome back.
Oh yeah.
How are you doing?
Oh yeah, it's good to be back, man. It's always good to be back here. It's good to be back with you. And it's good to have another
Oh yes, yep.
Oh yeah, we got
And
our,
let me just make that introduction. Yes. So additionally, I am extremely excited, as Rohan alluded to welcome in Arnav Roy for today's episode. Arnav is a longtime supporter of the Boston Celtics and also hosts his own podcast, the Grateful Living Podcast, which I highly recommend all of you give a listen to when you get an opportunity. Arnav, how have you been? And welcome to the CV Update Podcast. Great to have you, man.
Amartya and Rohan, thank you so much for having me. I have been good. Had a good fourth, and thankful to be on.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you on, man. So let's just start off today's show by discussing the Boston Celtics. And we will also discuss the NBA Finals with Game 3 being played tonight at the Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee with tip-off scheduled at 8 p.m. But let's talk about the Celtics first. So I'm going to go to the first question. The big news from like a month ago now, Danny Ainge retiring, quote unquote retiring, and Brad Stevens going up from the head coach to the new president of basketball operations. So do you think a coaching change and general manager change was necessary? I guess, Rohan, let's start with you first.
Oh man, usually when you leave a coaching position, it's usually a downward spiral. But in the case of Brad Stevens, it's an upward spiral. I didn't see that coming, but hey, I'll take it. I mean, under Brad Stevens, the Celtics, they had a series of pretty good seasons where they consistently made it somewhat deep into the playoffs, but they never really quite got over the top. And Brad Stevens, I felt he was a good motivator of the team, but I think the time was up for the Celtics to really shake something up, and for Danny Ainge to kind of step aside and give way for Brad Stevens, not a bad move, and bring in Udoka in place. I mean, I don't to be fair, I don't really know too much about Udoka and how he would be as a coach, but it's always good to have fresh faces, and with this core group of guys on the Celtics. A fresh face can always, it's always something you can do to see maybe you can get them over the top. But I mean, this team, I've always said for a while, they have what it takes individually. They got good players. It's just that they don't really quite get it together. And at key crunch times, they just consistently not been able to step it up. So I mean, they definitely have potential. And with the Udoka, I'm really hoping that he can find some sort of magic in this team, because they definitely have it to succeed. They just haven't been able to show it. That's all.
Oh, definitely, Arnav. What's your take on this?
Yeah, no, I mean it was sad in the sense that I think a lot of the Ainge at least stepping down was health related. You know, obviously he had the heart attack in 2019, and then recently he told the Associated Press like I started thinking about what I was doing with my life. You're surrounded by your 6 children in the hospital, and they say, hey, you need to stop doing this. So, I mean, obviously it was tough seeing him. I think the health reason had a lot to do with why he stepped down. So it's tough, for him, I think, just that being the reason. But I think this is a great move in the sense that Brad having the ability to have coached 8 years against the players he's looking at and coach the players currently on the team gives him a real good sense of what the team needs and what it's missing, and that's a really unique vantage point. I can't really remember. I mean, I know Pat Riley has definitely made um this sort of move, but I mean, I don't know if the NBA tracks this, but I mean, this might be the first time that a coach has moved up or moved to a GM role from a coaching role in the same season. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think Greg Popovich back in the day, like he started off as the GM of the Spurs, and then he like ended up as the coach because he fired like the coach and then named himself as the coach. So I can think that's like probably the closest thing I can think of someone doing that, probably. And then I guess Pat Riley did it too with the Miami Heat back in like 2005 or 2006, probably. I think that's what it was. So yeah, I mean, I think my take is like sort of, I think maybe fairly or unfairly, the last couple of years for Danny Ainge, he didn't do a great job managing the roster. I don't think he did. Like, I mean, I give him credit for 2008. I do give him a lot of credit. I mean, getting Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen and building that big three and getting Rondo from the Phoenix Suns in a trade, like the draft night trade, that was big. But I feel like in recent years and really like kind of how the last couple of years went, like I'm actually not going to blame him for what happened with Kyrie because honestly, like I don't think anyone expected this to turn out. Like Kyrie even promised to come back, right? Like the opening night, he promised like he would resign. And then I'm okay with them also not getting Anthony Davis either because Anthony Davis would not have been happy here. And after what happened with Kyrie being unhappy, then I don't think you want to give up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for an unhappy Anthony Davis for like 1.5 years when he wanted to go to LA. So I'm actually okay. I think he did a good
hold on
job.
to Jason Tatum. Hold on to Jason Tatum.
Exactly. But like, I don't know, like what happened last offseason, like when he just lost Gordon Hayward for nothing to the Charlotte Hornets, I think that was pretty unacceptable in my opinion. Like you lose a guy, like, I mean, we might have our gripes with Gordon Hayward considering how everything kind of went. And it's fairly or unfairly because he was battling injuries almost every season he was here. But at the same time, I think just losing him for nothing. And then this team just seemed checked out. Like I know they started off well, but they just seemed really checked out at some point. And I think it was just time for like a fresh voice, like a new face. And I think Brad Stevens, I think it was pretty obvious at the end, the players had kind of tuned him out at the end. Like Brad Stevens himself kind of at press conferences in his diplomatic sense would just basically say, like, he'd basically say, what at least I interpreted it as was, I can't get through to these guys anymore. So I think it's important now to have someone who can. And I think at least Udoka worked with Tatum, Brown, and Marcus Smart during like the Team USA basketball, like a couple years ago in 2019. So at least they like him. Tatum and Brown, I think, have both endorsed him publicly. So at least you have a coach who the players respect. And that's what you need at the end of the day. You need someone who can kind of get through to Tatum and Brown. Because at this point, like this next coach for Jason Tatum, like this hiring is probably going to be the most critical hiring that the Celtics have made in Tatum's career. And I say that, like, I really mean that because this is the guy who, like, Tatum, when I look at Tatum, I see someone who could literally be like an MVP candidate, probably like in 2 years. Like that's how good this guy is. Like that's not a stretch anymore. So we need a coach who can get through to Tatum and Brown. Brown's ceiling isn't that high, but Brown could be a very, very good. Like he could be like a top 15 player in this league. I mean, he already showed tremendous strides. So I think it's just time for a coaching change and a GM change. And I think sometimes having a fresh voice. And I agree with you, Arnav. Like I think Brad knows Tatum and Brown so well from coaching them. He knows what type of players best fit the style. So, and like you saw him with no hesitation, he was able to trade Kemba Walker to the Oklahoma City Thunder and got back Al Horford. So, and so
I'm excited to have Al Horford back. I'm excited about that because the Celtics. My memories of the Celtics when Al Horford was around were much more fun than this Celtics team that we have right now.
Yeah, and also just remember like the Milwaukee series in 2019, the one game the Celtics won, Al Horford did a terrific job on Giannis. I think that was in 2019, the famous game where Paul Pierce said after game one it was going to be over. You remember that, Arnav?
Yeah, they were going to sweep him. Yeah,
he was right about who was sweep. He was just, I mean, he was right about who would win 4 straight. He was right that someone would win 4 straight, but just the wrong team, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess like, but also I just want to say one other thing about Brad Stevens. I did like him as a coach, but the last 3 seasons, I was not very happy with the results. Like 18-19, we remember, with a great roster, 49-33, and they got the 4 seed, lose to Milwaukee in that 4-1. Then
the conference final exit.
Yeah, that was
like a second and a pair of second round.
No, it was also last season against Miami. I just, that Heat team was not like, they should have beaten that Heat team. Like that still bothers me. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, look, I give credit to Miami. They outplayed you, but
come on. Like, even if they beat you, they would have gotten slaughtered by the Lakers last year.
I don't know about that. I mean, they had beaten the Lakers pretty good that year. And then the other game was like a 2-point game and Tatum scored 41. So I don't think they would have, like, I don't know. They probably would have lost to the Lakers, but I think they would have probably done better than Miami. Like, probably would have given Miami more, like the Lakers more of a scare than Miami did. I don't know. Arnav, what do you think? Do you think last season was kind of like a big letdown the way it ended?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the one thing that is tough is Kemba's always not been 100%, and that's been a theme of, with Kemba, Gordon Hayward, even, Kyrie to an extent. With all these free agents, it's been quite annoying because when you're analyzing them, you know, like they're never healthy, which really stinks. But no, I mean, to your point, no, they definitely could have done a better job against Miami for sure. And that does go to Brad because uh we I we definitely could have won that series for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like game 1 and 2, if I remember correctly, they had double-digit leads like in the second half in both games, and they blew it, I think. So like, that just comes out of coaching, like bad execution. And I like Brad, but I think, yeah, I mean, I'm okay with him still being on
That's
the team.
that's
But
the thing with the Celtics, right? Like they're able to build up these huge leads. They just can't close the deal. It's just been a recurring theme over and over again. They just let teams back into the game like late on like, later on, and like their fourth quarter numbers are probably like mediocre at best, and it's going to take better than that to really contend for a championship.
yeah, so in that case, usually that falls down to coaching, I think. So I think I'm okay with the move, and I guess none of us have to really discuss much about what happened this past season. Just an absolute disaster. Like I can't say anything nicer than that. Like it was just a bad year. Like I know Jaylen Brown wasn't there for the Brooklyn series. I know that, but even if he was there, they wouldn't have beaten the Nets in that series. So I'm totally like, it was just a bad year all around. Like they just had so many bad. Like remember Oklahoma City? They snapped Oklahoma City's like 19-game losing streak or something like that. There was just bad loss after bad loss. They just got humiliated. It was just a bad year. So, I mean, I don't have to go too much into 20 to 21. Not all of us just remember how bad it was overall. So, I mean, I'm okay with that move. But yeah, that's our first question. And I know we talked about Kemba Walker. We're going to get into that a little more. But I just wanted to, I guess the next question was just about Udoka. Arnav, do you think Udoka is the guy? Like, how are you feeling about him going into the season? Do you like the move?
Yeah, so I mean, he's worked under Pop, which is always a good thing. He's seen, he's also worked under Brett Brown and Steve Nash, and so he has an idea of dealing with star players, like a Simmons and Embiid, or a Durant, Harden, Kyrie. So I think just seeing that interaction from a third party perspective or from an assistant coach perspective, I think will give him a lot of knowledge on how he's going to manage Tatum and Brown, um, because I think that is really going to be the key to this whole thing. Um, he's also a former player himself, played in the NBA from '06 to 11. And as you mentioned, Amartya, he was an assistant for the 2019 FIBA World Cup with Tatum, Brown, and Smart. So that familiarity definitely will help. Um, as you said, I think it's really just about a fresh face and a different personality. I don't think Brad had the personality to, get his players, motivated or up, or be able to manage personalities as well. Having a former NBA player come in here uh, to manage these guys, I think I think he'll do a good job.
No, I totally agree. Rohan, do you have any other thoughts on Udoka overall? Because I know you talked about him initially. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to have a fresh face, and I actually liked Brad Stevens. I just didn't think that he was the best fit for the role. So I kind of like the current setup where Brad Stevens is not the coach, but he hasn't really gone away. And I like the fact that yeah, you do have a new coach, but Brad Stevens is still kind of watching over things. So it's so he because he was able to get the team this far, just wasn't able to finish the job. And I think he made a good decision bringing in Udoka, and I trust Brad Stevens' judgment here, and I trust his judgment that yeah, he was no longer the best fit for that coaching role, and I'm curious to see how Udoka handles this responsibility.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Udoka was like among the short list of candidates. There's also Chauncey Billups, who I think went to Portland, and then Jason Kidd, who's now the coach of the Dallas Mavericks. So there were some other choices. I think some people wanted Kidd. Personally, with Kidd, just on him, like, do you think like, are you okay with Udoka over guys like Kidd and Chauncey Billups, who were actually like, I mean, stars in the league, versus Udoka, who's like a fringe player at best? Like Arnav, do you think that matters at all? Like having like a Hall of Fame type of guy versus like some fringe type of player, like as a coach?
Yeah, it's interesting because you think about the greatest, coach of all time in the NBA, and he was a good role player for the Knicks, and Phil Jackson, um, and I think it's safe to say some of the greatest players aren't the best teachers. Michael Jordan's not the greatest coach of all time. He's the greatest player. So I mean, I think that perspective of being on the bench and often, listening to the coaches more because you're not getting playing time. And then also having, the overseas experience and things of that nature and being introduced to different concepts, like European or other, styles of plays and playbooks and calls, that can't ever hurt. Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know if
no, I
that answers.
totally agree. No, I agree. So like I think sometimes they say like the best players are not the best teachers, and I think that's the case. Like I think, yeah, as you say, like the
It's a
fringe
totally
players.
different skill set.
It's also like the fringe players, they kind of like, I don't know, they sort of know the grit and grind process because they have to work a lot harder than some of the other guys. Not that the other guys, the stars, don't work hard, but like Kevin Durant trying to teach you versus I'm trying to think like I don't know, like Eddie House. I'm just from back in the day. Like it's like a different skill set, right? Like Kevin Durant's one of a Hall of Famer. Eddie House is like a role player. Like Eddie House to me would probably be a better teacher. I might go to him because I think he sort of understands the grit and grind process more than a guy like Kevin Durant, who's just sort of naturally gifted to be great at what he is. So like I think totally like I think these coaches are so I think Udoka fits that bill. And you mentioned Phil Jackson, another great example. Greg Popovich didn't even play in the NBA, I don't think. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what it goes from there. But okay, so now we talked about that. So let's talk about the Kemba Walker trade now. I just want to talk about that a little bit. Just a refresher: the Celtics sent Kemba Walker, the number 16 overall pick from this season, and a 2025 second rounder to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Al Horford, Moses Brown, and a 2023 second rounder. And what was your thought on the trade, Arnav? Let's start with you on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, clearly as we talked about, Brad having coached these guys, Brad must have felt like Kemba can't stay healthy. I mean, because that really, in terms of the players he got back, this really wasn't, it was more of a cap saving move and saving that 8 million a year to maybe go after, a different point guard, maybe like Alonzo Ball or somebody like that who's a free agent possibly. But it's tough because you look at how injury free Kemba was in Charlotte for whatever the first 8 or 9 years he was there, and then comes here and he just can't be healthy. Because honestly, those three guys, I mean, a healthy Walker, Brown, and Tatum is quite a force, but he just could never stay healthy. And so I think Brad saw the writing on the wall on that. Al's a great guy, Al, as we've talked about having, I think that's another aspect that Brad saw that, he didn't, I don't, obviously I don't know, but like, I don't feel like Brad did a good job of managing personalities in the locker room and things of that nature. And I think that he felt Al could be that veteran leader to manage and keep the guys, not going too high, not going too low. And I mean, there might be a diamond in the rough with Moses Brown, especially with having Al there as a mentor. There's something to be said of, rather than taking a first rounder this year, you're getting a second year player at a position you're not that strong at. Can you turn, Moses is like, you know, 10 points a game or whatever to 15 or 17, and can he be a real impactful player? um it will only time will tell, the development that he can bring to this team.
No, hey Rohan,
Yeah, yeah, I gotta say, I like the move because I mean, Kemba Walker, I mean, even though he's a good player, I mean, he had kind of struggled lately, and bringing Al Horford in for Kemba Walker, I mean, I like bringing in Al Horford back. I think it's a great move, as I said earlier, and of course you're getting Moses Brown as well. So I mean, you're getting two players for the loss of one, so that should be a win, pretty much in and of itself. And of course, giving up a 2025 second rounder and getting a 2023 second rounder, so they get to utilize that 2 years earlier. So it kind of feels like the Celtics know that they've almost have all the pieces in play. They just have to be able to do something more quickly 2 years down the line as opposed to 4 years down the line. And I mean, giving up the 16th overall pick, I guess he got it. There was a little bit of price to be paid over there, but you know, overall, not a bad move. And it looks like the Celtics are acting with a little bit of urgency, and I like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, people mentioned the Kemba injury, and I know it's a big one, but I also think there was a lot of like people were a little too harsh to judge the injury this season. And the reason I just say this season is because obviously I agree the knee is a concern, but so many star players in this league have like battled serious injuries this season, like LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard literally missed the last 8 games of the Clippers playoff run. He couldn't play, and that's why the Clippers couldn't win. Jamal Murray tore his ACL, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, they weren't healthy for the Nets, and that's why they lost to the Bucks in the end. So I think I agree the knee is a concern, but there were so many star players that battled like pretty bad injuries this season. So I don't know if like Kemba's like knee, I know it came up last year, but I don't know if Kemba's knee issue was like something that was also kind of aggravated by like kind of like the condensed schedule and everything sort of working like that this season. So I mean, I think it's like I'm okay with them letting it go, like him go. Like obviously, I think the team talent wise is worse off with this trade. Like Horford at this point, it's like a veteran. Moses Brown, sure he could be a pretty good player, but he's still an unknown at this point of what it's like. We're basically hoping on the potential of him. We haven't actually seen him do that yet. So I mean, Kemba, like even like last season scored 17 a game or so. So he's still like a pretty good player. But like I think I like the trade just because cap wise it now allows them to sign a max free agent next season since Horford's entering the final year of his deal now. So you get to basically move up 1 year in the process. So I like it for that reason. I don't really like it because of the talent though. And I'm also like, I kind of feel bad for like the injury situation because I think a lot of players battle pretty bad injuries this season. Like I would say it's pretty bad, like because like they have to miss like playoff games and stuff like that. So Kemba wasn't the only one. So I think some people were judging him a little too harshly if they were sort of like saying it like that. Like I'm not saying like any one of you are doing it like I'm not trying to criticize anyone like specifically, but I also think like we need to also be fair on like Kemba's situation because there were a lot of other star players who like missed time due to injury.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think with Brad, you know, he now, you know, realizes, there's no, you know, I mean, obviously ownership trusts him, but he now needs to make moves, to ensure his own job security. And I think having seen the 2020, you know, that summer playoffs where Kemba wasn't healthy, and then having this year where they tried to rest him for a lot of the beginning and then tried to ease him back in, and that never getting right. I think he had a flashback to Isaiah Thomas and those years. Obviously a different injury, not a hip versus knee, but for Brad, I think it came down to I need to trust my gut, and part of is of playing is being on the court, and he must have felt like the next couple of years Kemba wasn't going to be healthy enough in his 30s to be a productive player, and so he's going to have to this is obviously a big decision for him and something he's always going to be judged by as a GM.
Totally, yeah. So no, I mean, I think all of us sort of like the Kemba Walker trade, and I guess we're okay with it going forward. So hopefully it works out in the Celtics' favor. So next question, just like what's in your biggest mind was the biggest reason for the Celtics' major shortcomings this season? So let's start with you, Rohan.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, they had all the parts, they had all the right players. They just didn't have the right amount of cohesion, right? They couldn't, like I said earlier, they couldn't hold leads late in games. I mean, they've shown incredible skill, but when it comes to really grinding out a result and sealing the deal, closing out a game, a lot of times I just kind of saw them let other teams back into it way too many times, and sometimes it happens, but I mean, I saw it enough times in the Celtics that I kind of got the feeling that that they didn't really have the right the right, I mean, cohesion, as I said earlier, as a team to kind of stick one out together. And uh, more on what I said earlier about Brad Stevens. I mean, he's a good motivator and he's a good coach, but I mean, a coaching change was due, and I am happy that that's happening. But I mean, Brad Stevens still being there, and that definitely helps. So he can kind of still oversee the day-to-day dealings of the team. So when it comes to why they came up short so often, I would just attribute that to not being able to come up in big moments against big teams in key situations, like those couple of second round exits, and then of course like that conference finals in 2018, you were up 3-2 and you couldn't close it out. I mean, those are really series that they should have closed out. And
Are you talking about the Cavs series in 2018?
yeah. So like,
See, I don't know if like, I mean, I'm talking more for like this season. Like, I mean, honestly, I'm okay with like what happened in 2018.
well,
Because I'm
I'm looking more.
Tatum.
But I'm looking more and more at like the past few years in like the Celtics history, and because I mean their underperformance is not really a new thing, right? They've always been like better than mediocre, but just not good enough to get over the top. So I mean I think these moves are good in the sense that they're making changes, they're making visible changes, but they're not changes just for the sake of making changes. In other words, they're not sabotaging the team. So it's really kind of a gamble, and I kind of think I'd like to think that the gamble is going to pay off. So new management, new blood, new faces. I like where this team's going, and I'm curious to see how it goes.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question because, as Rohan said, as you look at the macro perspective, at least for me, a lot of it comes down to consistency of play and you know, just performing in the playoffs. As you said, Ron, in the 2018, you know, they were up 3-2. That fourth quarter against the Cavs in game 7, I mean, that was just horrific. And then you look at 2020, you know, even the Toronto series, that might have could have maybe been a 4-game sweep. And
Well, I
there's a
OG, remember made that 3 at the
yeah,
end.
yeah, no, and there's a let up, and then suddenly it's a much longer series, and it's like, at a certain point, um, I don't know how much you put on the players versus Brad, but there's an aspect of when the time comes and you need to, turn it on. It seems like this team has never turned it on, and I think the other thing, especially with the move that Brad made as a GM, it seems like he's had a tough time of figuring out who the leader is. Especially, I guess this was more prevalent in the 2020 playoffs. But when you have a guy like Kemba, Jason, Jalen, it's tough to figure out who the go-to guy is. And I think that 2018 team struggled with it too, whereas a bunch of mediocre to better than mediocre players playing together as a team. But then it also gets into a fact like, who's our guy taking the last shot? And I think this move really, he's propelling it so that Tatum and Brown take that leadership of, we're the guys. In the past, they've had Kyrie, they've had Kemba, they've had veteran guys who are max players who are better than them. And so sometimes they've deferred, and sometimes, I think Tatum hasn't been as selfish as he's needed to be. But now, especially if they don't bring in any free agents who are technically higher caliber players or have been doing it for a longer time in this league, like a Kemba or Kyrie, the onus is on Brown and Tatum at that point. And there's no question in terms of the offense and, late in game situations, it's going to be one of those two guys. It has to be. It's not a question of, oh, is it one of the three guys? It's you two are now the guys. And I think that will help because there's clear defined leadership when it comes to the offensive end and late game situations.
No, I agree with that. And like one of the big things, as you mentioned, Arnav, you like sort of alluded to, it's like Tatum at this point needs to emerge as like a real leader. And I know he's young at this point, so he's hopefully he grows into that over time. Like he still hasn't emerged as the type of guy who will try to get his guys involved, like try to urge them. Like he doesn't have like I feel like he's a very passive type of like player right now in the sense like he'll go and he'll score 50, but he's still not the type of guy who will like go and try to push his teammates to be better yet. And I really hope he can turn into that, because if he can do that, then that's kind of the difference between like a guy like LeBron versus some other like star players, probably who can't lead as well as like LeBron can. And so like, I mean, I think at this point it's going to be like, it really comes down to like, I mean, what happened this past season, I think, as Rohan mentioned, like they didn't have like, it was just a disheveled chemistry. Like seemed like a lot of times they had like different like lineups a lot of the time.
It just felt like they rise and fall with however well Jason Tatum played that night. Jason Tatum,
yeah, exactly. Remember the game
points,
against the Warriors? Remember the game against the Warriors? He had like 44. Steph had like 40. It was a really great game. Then the next game against the Chicago Bulls, who were dreadful, Tatum shot 3 of 17. That is like, you can't do that. Like if you were the star player of the team, you cannot go 3 of 17.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's bad for Tatum, but also as a team, I mean, you need more depth to your team so that if your star doesn't perform, you have other elements to back it up.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, I think it was just sort of like everything that can go wrong went wrong for this team. Like they just lost so many bad games at that point, and none of us were surprised at the end when they lost to the Brooklyn Nets, who were just like a better team at that point. So I think it just what happened was like Tatum was sort of like he needs to develop as a leader, so does Brown. And I think also the coaching was frustrated and also checked out at the end. So it just seemed like everyone was just sort of like ready for the offseason and stuff like that. So I think that was kind of one of the biggest reasons at the end. Like the team just sort of because they actually started off pretty good, if I remember. I think they started 8-3 actually, and then Tatum actually had COVID, and then that's when the team started like really kind of spiraling downward. So I think that's sort of what happened. Like after a while, like the players just realized that they had no shot at like a title or really even contending, and they just sort of were like, let's just finish the season and head into the off season. So I think that was one of the biggest reasons they fell short. Like, so yeah, I mean, definitely was a disappointing season. And I guess this goes just to the next question. This is going to be Tatum's 5th season now and Jaylen Brown's 6th season, and basically the 5th season where these two are playing together. And do you think that it's possible that they can be the 2 best players on a championship contending team? Or do you think it's going to be necessary to trade Jaylen Brown at some point and bring in someone who you think might suit like Jason Tatum's game better?
I actually think the 2 best players are going to be Jason Tatum and Al Horford.
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a contrarian opinion, but I mean, I've seen Al Horford and I've seen how he played when he was with the Celtics. I mean, second stint never hurts to have that second stint, but I mean, him along with Jason Tatum, it can't hurt to have that. A little bit of a contrarian opinion, just throwing that out there.
Okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, as you look at the construction of the league, you need 2 all-stars for sure to lead you. And I obviously the Clippers haven't figured it out, but these 2 guys are the closest to a Paul George and Kawhi Leonard that you could get at a younger level. They may be 3 or 4 seasons or so. I mean, Tatum's already an all-star, so I mean, they might be, 2 to 3 seasons.
Brown's also an all-star too, by the way. So.
Yeah, no, that's true. So they might be, in terms of getting to those guys' level where they are right now, they might be 2 or 3 seasons away. But if you're looking at if you're a GM, from a talent perspective, I mean, Tatum's on pace, to be a Hall of Famer. Brown's potentially has the possibility of being a perennial all-star. Like, it's not, and they're both, young guys that have gotten a lot of playoff experience. They have a good headspace around them. They're not guys that do, dumb things off the court. Jalen's, a very educated guy, speaks at Harvard and MIT on race relations and things of that nature. So, if you're looking at 2 guys to build on, for me, from a talent perspective and from the individual perspective, I don't think you could get 2 better young stars. That's just my opinion. Obviously, if things, if a trade like, a Bradley Beal or something comes about, obviously you have to look at possibly trading Brown, just because, Brad has the ability to score 36 points a game, albeit on a poor Wizards team. But when you have that level of talent, in a possibility for a trade, you definitely have to at least consider it.
It's interesting. Like, I'm not that big on Bradley Beal. Like, I think he's a solid player, but like as you said, like I think he scores a lot because he's on like a bad team. He's almost kind of like prior to, not now obviously, but like what Devin Booker was to the Phoenix Suns, like prior to the season, because now we see him as like a real scorer. But like, like on these bad teams, someone has to score the points, right? So I'm not as like enthusiastic about Bradley Beal. Like, I don't know how good he would be on like a real contending team versus like Jaylen Brown. So I think like, so in my take, like I think it's, while it is year 5 of the Brown Tatum duo, it's also kind of, I still think it's actually kind of premature to determine like what the ceilings of these two can kind of be. And the reason I just say that is because Brown is still just 24, Tatum is just 23. So there's a lot of growing that these two can do, because they both came into the league like just after 1 year of college. So they were 19 at the time. And Tatum at 23 has already become one of the best players in the league. And like the way this guy can score the ball, it is really just amazing. He can just score like 40 like easily. Like, I mean, the play-in game against the Wizards, he had 50, and then he scored 50 in the one game the Celtics beat the Nets. And to me, that was actually more impressive than how the Bucks did in the end, because in that game, Kyrie, Harden, and Durant all played in that game, whereas the Bucks never actually beat a healthy Nets team with all 3 of those stars playing at a given time. It basically was only after like Harden went out or something like that that the Bucks were able to win. So the Celtics were able to at least win one game against that loaded Brooklyn team, which to me was more impressive than how Milwaukee did it, even though Milwaukee did win that series. So I think Tatum can totally be the best player on the championship team, but I think he does need to grow more. Like, he needs to get his players involved. And I think Brown can develop as like the second guy, like the next best player on the team. I think that's sort of what it's already kind of turned into that hierarchy, right? Brown is so Tatum's your number 1 player. Brown is right after him, number 2. And I think I'd like to just sort of see with the new coach how it all works out, because maybe the new coach is the key. Maybe this is like the Steve Kerr moment for the Boston Celtics, where Steph, Clay, and Draymond have been playing together under Mark Jackson. Then Steve Kerr comes in year 1, they win the championship, win 67 games, and then the year after they win 73 games. So maybe this is like kind of the moment that we've been looking for. So I think that it's sort of premature to determine if they can or cannot. That's like sort of my answer to this question. But like, so what do you think, Arnav? Do you think it's also kind of early to determine that for sure based on their age?
I mean, for me, and not to disagree, but I think, I don't play the young card with them. 5 or 6 years, for some, I mean, that's a good amount of time. You're for, you know, you're not a vet, but you've seen a lot of the NBA. And I think when you have the talent to be an all-star, at that point, from this season on, I'm really not going to give them the excuse of being young, to be honest. They've seen everything. They've played against the best. They've been in 3 Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, they've seen, they've played alongside a Kyrie, a Kemba. Like, they've seen what it takes. For me, they need to now, they're young. Being young is no longer an excuse, and especially now with Kemba gone, the responsibility is on them. um Obviously they are still young, but you've been there for 5 6 years. Like, I think at that point, it's one thing to say 2 or 3 years you're young, but 5 6 years you've been an all-star, and things of that nature. I mean, at some point, that has to stop being an excuse.
No, I totally agree. And I don't want to give them the excuse. I just say, like, I mean, we don't want to like necessarily label them as like they can't win a championship at that age. That's what I'm more trying to say. Like, I don't want to like give them.
Oh yeah, they got
like,
a long career ahead of them.
Yeah. So I'm more saying like I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I'm more
definitely
just
not
saying,
young from an age perspective, but I mean, they're young from an age perspective, but as Arnav pointed out, not young from an experience perspective. And
they're very like qualified considering their like age. Like, I mean, like you've been like they've been in the playoffs every year, and I mean, for like usually these lottery type of players, it's usually kind of a grind initially because you're on bad teams. Usually they got the luxury of being on a team that was already on a playoff team. I think Brown joined in 2016, like he was drafted in 2016. That team was still a playoff team, and then the year Tatum had joined, like that team had gone to the Eastern Conference Finals. So yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I agree. Like, I'm not going to use it as an excuse, but I just also don't want to like people, like I do look at the age and say like, there's still room for them to grow and potentially become like that type of like franchise player who can win a championship. Like, after all, like think even a guy like LeBron James, it took him like 7 seasons to win his first championship. Even Michael Jordan took him 7 years. So Tatum still is in that, like, I guess, right path. Like he still has a couple years. And Kevin Durant, how long did it take him? I guess it took him like 10 years, right? 2017 was his first after he got drafted in 2007. So yeah, I mean, I agree. We can't use that as an excuse, and there should be no excuses for this team. Like at this point, it's on these two to basically deliver the results, and they're also being paid like max dollars. Tatum's has a max contract. Brown has one too. So yeah, we gotta expect the results. That's only fair at this point. So yeah. So our next question now, like this was mentioned by Bill Simmons recently. I just want to quickly touch on this. He discussed how he either sees Marcus Smart getting traded. So we talked a lot about Brown and Tatum, and sometimes, like I guess people like to consider Marcus Smart to be the next best player. And basically Simmons basically said he either sees him getting traded or extended. And which do you prefer? Just a simple question.
I like to see him extended. I mean, like, unless you can come up with a better replacement for him. I mean, yeah. I mean, he's by no means a superstar, but I mean, he's been able to carry the team through good times and bad. And as a senior most player, I mean, he's a good role player and he's able to motivate his teammates. Even though I alluded earlier to how this is on a much larger scale, this may be an issue for the core of the team. But Marcus Smart has been an integral part of the team for a while, and it would have to take something really, really special, in my opinion, to get rid of him. Something you would need to have extraordinary circumstances, or have a replacement who's just so much of a steal compared to Marcus Smart, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think every team needs a guy like Marcus Smart that is willing to do the dirty work, willing to guard potentially the opponent's team's best player. I mean, that is quite the asset, especially looking at the Eastern Conference. And, you know, if everybody's healthy, the Nets are probably the number one team next year in the East. And, for a team like that, I mean, you know, he can guard Harden or he can guard Kyrie, and the other two can guard, whoever is remaining between Durant and Harden or whatever. Um, that type of value is something most NBA players don't do. They're mostly focused on the offensive end, and his focus on, being defensive, taking charges, um, being a guy that just involves everybody else. It's a very valuable quality, and it's a quality a lot of championship teams, especially when you look at the Celtics, like a James Posey, um, the Lakers in 2010 with Ron Artest. It's a quality that can be very helpful in easing, you know, the burden. you know Ron guarding Paul Pierce allows, Kobe to just focus on Ray Allen in 2010. So that sort of thing um is very helpful, and can keep the energy levels of Brown and Tatum less focused defensively and more offensively focused.
Yeah, so for me, I'm not as, maybe to digress a little bit from you two. Like I like Smart as a player, and I think he is a nice player to have. I agree he's important, but at the same time, he's also like, I feel he's expendable. Like there's a lot of these types of guys in the league who kind of give you the defense. He's a better offensive player. Like he's actually improved a lot on offense, but for me, it's going to really depend on like the trade. Like it depends on who you sort of get in return. But I wouldn't really, I definitely don't put him on the same. Like, I mean, I think he's definitely expendable if the right type of option comes. Like, I don't know, like, I mean, a guy like Avery Bradley, if you remember him from a couple years ago, like, he was also that type of guy, a great defensive player emerging as an offense. And then, I mean, the Celtics traded him for Marcus Morris in 2017 to the Detroit Pistons. And like, I feel like Smart's kind of like another type of Avery Bradley type player. Like, and Bradley since then has like kind of moved around the league too a bit. Like, I think he's on the Lakers, and I don't know where he is right now, but that's the thing. So I think in my opinion, like he's a nice player to have, but he's also expendable. Like if you get a good package for him and a team like Golden State's willing to, excuse me, give like their first round pick, I would do that because I also think sometimes I don't like this about Smart. He takes a lot of the extra shots from like Tatum and Brown. He did that a lot in the 2020 like Eastern Conference Finals against Miami. I think that final game, he took way too many shots at the end. And the game 6, which they lost, like he took, so he needs to like at this point, like either Udoka needs to talk to him and say, like, look, you are a nice player, but you need to do what you do best, which is defense. And occasionally, yeah, if you're open, you can shoot that three. But he should not be like shooting like 20 shots a game because he's not that type of player. So either like they have to get that to him or you have to move him. Yeah, so I guess you guys like, okay, so and I guess the next question then, and let's just talk about Evan Fournier really quickly. Just do you think the Celtics should re-sign him this season, like after the season he had?
Why not? Why not?
Why
Right?
not?
Yeah.
Not my money, just right.
Yeah, no, I mean it depends on the free agents you go after and the trades you try to make. You know, obviously as we mentioned, Bradley Beal, CJ McCollum are possible trade opportunities. So if those things happen and um you know, it might not be the best fit, you know, having another similar skill set player, but you know, depending on what they do, if they just get, you know, a more you know, mediocre level point guard like Alonzo Ball, then adding an Evan Fournier along with that, you know, is not a bad idea.
By the way, you just mentioned Lonzo Ball. Like, would that mean LeVar Ball would be like in Boston, hyping up the Celtics as like the next Chicago Bulls team?
Hey, I mean, you gotta love his passion for his sons, you know.
No, I
You know.
like it, but he just goes like overboard, which makes
Oh
it.
yeah, no. I mean, he's a genius marketer. He knows that controversy creates headlines. So, um, you know, but yeah, no. I mean, he's toned it down. I think because
I really don't hear about him anymore. Like honestly, I don't think I've
yeah,
heard about him in a while. Like his son's in Lamelo's in Charlotte, and he was really good the season before
yeah,
he got hurt. So
rookie of the year.
yep. Yeah, I guess like for me, it's just I guess I have the stats like 16 games he played with the Celtics, 11 starts, average 13 a game, 44.8% field goal percentage, and 46.3 percentage 3-point shooter. So he's a pretty good player overall. In the 5 games against the Brooklyn Nets, he averaged 15.4 a game. So he's definitely like a solid type of guy. He's kind of like, I don't know, like Jeff Green sort of. Like kind of reminds me of that type of guy, like the guy who can give you 15 a game. So, I mean, I think it's going to come down to like the contract he asks for and stuff like that. Like, if I don't want to pay him $20 million a year because he's not that type of player and he's not that good. Like to be your third best player, if you have title aspirations, like with the Magic, like that was a bad team, and he's like probably like their leading scorer or like the second best player, and like that team was not going anywhere. So I think he's like a nice role player to have, but I'm not going to like overpay for a guy like Evan Fournier if someone gives him 25 million a year, which nowadays like that's sort of like the standard for these types of players. So yeah, and just last question about the Celtics. The way too early prediction of next season's team. I just want to sort of get a sense, like, I don't know, Arnav, what's your prediction for next season?
It'll be interesting because I think again, I mean, depending on health, you have. I mean, the Nets are going to be good, the Bucks are going to be good, 76ers should be, you know, still be good. So I mean, for me, um, you know, at best, you know, we're at that 3 or 4 seed, you know, behind the Nets and Bucks. I think they'll, you know, if they're all healthy, those guys will be ahead of the Celtics. But again, I mean, if they underperform, you know, they could be in that 5 through 8 like they were this year. It'll just, you know, depend on, you know, what level of, you know, intensity they bring to the season.
Yeah. So do you have like a record prediction?
Um, you know, I think that, you know, 50 games for sure they should win, in my opinion. Um, whether they do better than that, will be a telltale sign of, you know, if they're, you know, a top 4 or bottom 4 playoff team. But I mean, I don't see why this team shouldn't win at least 50 games.
I agree. So
I got to go with 50 games as well. 50 around the ballpark. I'd say minimum 45, maximum 55. I know that's a big range, but I'd say seed wise, I'd probably say anywhere from a number 3 to a number 7 seed. And in terms of playoff runs, I mean, like as Arnav mentioned earlier, you got all these other good teams in the East. You got Milwaukee, you got Philadelphia, you got Brooklyn, and it's going to be tough to go up against those teams in the playoffs. the Celtics somehow put it together, and I actually think that they will. I think they can still make it past these teams. But I think their ceiling is probably the conference finals. I'd put their ceiling there, at least for this season. Not that they can't improve the season afterwards, but for this season, I'm going to go with conference finals.
Yeah, so I guess I have a concrete one. I say 51 and 31, so basically in that range. And I think they finish at the 4 seed. So like, I mean, yeah, like I agree. Brooklyn's probably the one team, like if everyone's healthy, that really, like I think they can't beat. But I still think that Milwaukee's a beatable team. Like I still am not that like impressed by Milwaukee, to be honest. Like I know they're in the finals and stuff like that, but they really like against like a hobbled up Brooklyn Nets team that went 7 games against an Atlanta team that they probably should have swept if they like got it together. They went to 6 games. So Milwaukee, I feel, is the type of team that you can definitely beat if you are able to like out coach them, and maybe Udoka is able to do that. So, and really Philly, we all saw Philly implode as usual against the Atlanta Hawks. So I don't know. Like, I mean, I think those 2 teams, at least, I'm not like, I think those are beatable teams. Like Brooklyn's the one that kind of really worries me, and we'll see what happens next season.
Yeah, I'm going to say, Celtics, Nets, Eastern Conference Finals, and Nets take it. That's my prediction for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to agree, but that's probably what I see them, unless some injury happens again, which you never know with the Nets, right? Because like Kyrie and Harden both like have had injury issues before.
Oh, but that team is so deep. Okay, if one is gone, someone else can step it up.
Oh, clearly that wasn't enough to beat the Bucks. So, right? And
well, I mean, the Bucks are having a good year. They're having an unusually good year. Like you said, they're a beatable team, but this year they're doing pretty well.
I mean, yeah, we'll see. So yeah, that's my prediction: the 51 and 31 and the 4 seed. And I don't know how they'll do in the playoffs, but yeah, let's reevaluate this next year to see how we did on that one. But anyways, just I want to quickly just discuss the NBA Finals. So the Phoenix Suns do lead that series 2-0, and just first question, like Arnav, what's the biggest reason you think for the Suns leading the series 2-0 so far?
I mean, defensively, I think the Bucks have not done a good job. Chris Paul has, done. I mean, give him credit. He's done a great job in the pick and rolls and penetrating and finding other people. The consistency again is a big factor. I mean, Middleton going 5 for 16 and 11 points in game 2. Holiday's numbers in game 1, what were they? They were 10 points, 4 of 14. I mean, the Bucks need Middleton and Holiday to play as good of a supporting cast role on the offensive end this series to win it. Otherwise they really can't. The way Chris Paul and Devin are playing along with Ayton, and even Bridges giving 27 in game 2. Not sure if he's going to do that, but I mean he's a guy that can give you 15 a game. So those 2 guys along with Lopez have to be consistent. Otherwise, this team really has very little chance in keeping it competitive.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I mean, for me, like, I think the biggest reason is like the Suns have had like players step up. So obviously Devin Booker game 1, 37, and then game 2 he had 31, and Chris Paul 32 in game 1 and 23 in game 2. But like I think, like for example, DeAndre Ayton in game 1, 22 points, 19 rebounds, just a phenomenal game. But game 2 he only had 10 points. But Mikal Bridges, as you mentioned, Arnav, scored 27 points. So they have guys step up if someone has an off night. Whereas if you look at Milwaukee, like obviously like game 1, in my opinion, Giannis wasn't like assertive enough. Like he had 17 rebounds, but 20 points for Giannis is you can't win with 20 points.
But his game 2 performance is insane.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the game 1 performance. Like that's the thing. Like I mean, and then it's just like a different set of guys every game who are having good games. There's no consistency, which is what Arnav was saying, right? Like I mean, game 1 like 20 points, 17 rebounds. Game 2 he was a beast, 42 points. But then Middleton actually in game 1 led the Bucks with 29 points, and then game 2 he has 11. Like it's just like you're just seeing no one step up, right? Like if Middleton's having an off night, they need a guy like Connaughton maybe to step up, or someone needs to step up, like the way Bridges did in Aiden's absence. And I think that's like one of the biggest differences. Like Booker and Paul are just going to do what they're going to be doing, and Bridges or Aiden or like someone else needs to step up for them. So I think that's the biggest reason. The Suns are just playing cohesively, and they have guys. They're playing like a real team, and I think that's the biggest reason. The Bucks look at times.
Phoenix crowd is tough too, so it's going to be to see how things go when it shifts to Milwaukee tonight.
Giannis has got to be relieved that they're not going to be counting down or counting up for the free throws, right? That's probably one of my favorite things I've loved seeing during the playoffs, how the crowd counts like his free throw time.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That is funny.
But yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, Drew Holiday totally needs to step up. I mean, they paid him a lot of money to come from New Orleans, and 10 points. He did score 17 in game 2, but they need Drew Holiday to be what they paid for, and they haven't gotten that so far. So yeah, and I guess next question is just on that realm, basically, like what do the Bucks need to do to get back into the series? And I think we kind of
they need a dynamic duo. I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, one night Giannis has it and Middleton doesn't. The other night Middleton has it, Giannis doesn't. They need to form that dynamic duo. You need both of those players to be performing at their peak against the Suns team, which is proving to be a lot more potent than I thought. And like I still think at the end of the day, I think the Suns are probably the better team. I'm gonna go with the Suns in 6. I think the Bucks are gonna take game 3 tonight. That's my prediction. But
that's actually my last question. So I guess you already answered that. So
after that, I'd say like the Suns are probably gonna take up game 4, and then you know the Bucks are probably just gonna win game 5 to stave off elimination and then fall in game 6. That's kind of how I see those.
So you basically answered my last question, and we'll get there, Rohan. But I just wanted to just quickly discuss a little more about the plan. So I guess like just for tonight's game, like I guess we've kind of already went there, but I mean to answer that part about like what do the Bucks need to do to get back into the series is basically I think Giannis needs to continue to be aggressive, and like I know he's not a great free throw shooter, but he needs to like get to the rim because that's his strength. And I don't like it when he just sort of like passes it up, takes like that type of shot, and he can't shoot 3-pointers. He's not a good 3-point shooter. He needs to play by his strengths. And his strength is when he goes to the rim and he drives, he is unstoppable. He is that good of a player. So he needs to do that. And if he gets fouled, then at this point, like he needs to embrace that and try his best to shoot it. Even if it doesn't go in, like the defense is going to get tired every time they basically have to foul you and try to stop you. And at some point, they're going to like make mistakes. So I think he needs to play by his strengths at this point. I know he is injured, but this is the finals, man. Like I don't know, and this is going to be as good of an opportunity for him to win. Like next year with Brooklyn back, and you never know what's going to happen. So you need to. I need to see more from Giannis in Game 3, and Middleton and Holiday need to step up as well for tonight to have a chance.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, just focusing on those paint points. I think in the last series, there was a game like Lopez was like 14 of 18 or something like that. I mean, he needs to be in the paint a lot more and get more easy baskets. But yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you two have said.
Yeah, and I guess like the next question is already kind of like who needs to step up for the Bucks. So we already kind of discussed that. It's going to be Middleton and Holiday. That's the big 3. So I guess we don't need to go into that. So I guess since Rohan already gave us predictions, Suns in 6. Arnav, what's your prediction for tonight and the rest of the series?
Honestly, I have a similar prediction to Rohan. It's going to come down to consistency, and I think being at home will give the chance for the Bucks to win 1 or 2 of these games that are coming up. But I do see the Phoenix Suns closing it out in 6 games, just because, as we've talked about, for star players, consistency is the name of the game. And I think that the Suns have 3 or 4 guys that have continued to be consistent, whereas the Bucks with their 2 or 3, or even if you include Brook in that 4, have just not been consistent. And I don't think that that's going to suddenly change, as they go forward in the NBA Finals.
Okay, and just before I give my prediction, I promised to the viewers we did not discuss this ahead of time because all 3 of us have the same prediction. I predict the Phoenix Suns to win Game 3, and I say Suns in 6. So I promise once again we did.
Yeah, the only way this gets interesting is if Milwaukee wins both games at home, Otherwise, the series I'd say is pretty much over.
Yeah, I agree. Like they need to win both at home. And, like I think tonight they're going to win by like 20. It's going to be one of those games where I think like the crowd is going to be really into it, and they're just going to be amped up. And I think that it's going to be kind of like the Celtics Nets series, right? Like the Celtics won that game 3, kind of the emotion, and then game 4 the Nets kind of recovered. So I think it's going to be like that. Except I think this is going to go 6 games. So Phoenix will win in Milwaukee to close it out. So anyway, that's going to be our NBA Finals take. And just Arnav, one quick Patriots question, just on the side. Do you see Mac Jones starting the season like at all, or do you think
I
is the
don't.
starter?
I don't. Bill likes comfort, loves veteran presence. Um,
But he
and
hates losing.
he does. But I mean, this team was, a couple game swings from making the playoffs. They're at the 1 yard line against Seattle. They have a breakdown against the Bills. They were a very competitive team for a team with basically no receivers. Um, so I do think Cam wins that battle. I don't think, just from the college to pro transition. I personally am always a believer you never play a guy in their first year. I always think or at least, you wait 8 games or so of their first season, just because I think it's a huge transition. And in terms of an investment value, you want to make sure that they're ready, and that they don't have terrible performances and that lowers their confidence. Um, but I think Newton's the guy, and I don't think you bring him back if you don't believe in him.
No, that's fair. So yeah, I think Newton at least starts the season, and it's gonna be week 4. It's gonna be the exciting matchup, right? Tom Brady returning to Gillette Stadium. That's gonna be the one that all of us are looking forward to.
Yeah, it's gonna be circled on our calendars.
And Arnav, just like one other quick question, just like since we're already talking about like the past, but just what's your do you think Tampa goes for a repeat next season, or do you think they get
I
thwarted?
mean, they've got a talented team. Have they lost many players?
Oh, all of their starters are back from last
Yeah.
season. All 22 are back.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things when you look at data analysis, you can't go against Tom the last 20 years. He's proven
Totally agree.
Tampa Bay.
he's proven himself. So no, I mean, uh, again, it's so interesting with these leagues. I think you saw it with the NBA, especially. I mean, health is everything, you know. I don't think if Brooklyn's healthy, they're in the finals. If the Lakers are healthy, they're definitely in the conference finals. Um, and so, I think the same way for the, for a team trying to repeat, um, that's really, I think, gonna be their major challenge. Otherwise, um, there's no better guy than Tom leading you offensively, from a mental and leadership perspective. And they've just had fun, and they've had the taste of winning, and you got a lot of talent when it comes to Antonio Brown. Um, what's
Mike
the
Evans, Chris
Mike Evans? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and then the running backs are pretty good too. So yeah,
and Gronk is there too. So
yeah,
yep.
it's a
But
lot of
anyways,
talent.
yeah, no, agreed. But
Yeah,
Arnav,
Tampa needs a basketball team. It's becoming the new city of champions, and they've
well,
only
didn't the Raptors have
the
one?
major.
Were the Raptors there
Yeah,
this past season?
yeah, yep.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
so I guess if the Raptors win it all, they're not going to win it. And by the time the time comes for them to even have a chance to win it all, they're going to be back up in Toronto. So that's probably not going to probably not going to be much of a thing for Tampa. But I guess Tampa has somewhat of a claim to that team. Maybe whatever little claim that is. Curious decision to put him in Tampa instead of Buffalo. That's what they did. That's what they did with the Jays.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. But it's interesting, yeah. So, anyways, Arnav, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was all great talking basketball and hoops. And
Yeah, Arnav, tell us where we can get your podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's everywhere, I think. I mean, YouTube, Spotify, Apple.
do you want to just like say the
Yeah,
name and the Instagram
yeah,
handle for the listeners?
yeah. So it's the Grateful Living podcast. My personal Instagram is aroy81547. The podcast also has an Instagram handle, Grateful Living Podcast. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can hit me up on LinkedIn.
No TikTok yet?
I am on TikTok
Oh, you
too. Yeah,
are?
yeah.
Awesome.
I post here and there, but yeah, Aroy81547. The date of India's independence. That's my
Well,
Instagram.
then you should have made it 15847.
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
Mentions.
that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
All right, yeah, and please, guys, listen to Arnav's content. It is terrific. He also has a vlog now, right? Every week you do the vlog, which is pretty
Yeah,
cool.
YouTube
So,
channel. Yeah.
yeah, totally recommend giving his content a listen. But Arnav, thank you for coming on, man. It was awesome
Yeah.
having you, and we hope to have you back on again at some point.
Yeah, no, I'd love to be back on, and thank you guys. Awesome to see the research you guys put in and the knowledge you have, and just the love that you have for Boston sports and sports in general. It's great to see, and best of luck with this going forward. I'll definitely be sure to advertise it on my platforms.
Yeah, I'll be posting this afterward, so we'll be sure to get that up there. All right, but
Thanks,
anyways,
pleasure to have you on.
Yeah,
yep.
thank
And
you.
to all our listeners, have a great rest of your day, and we will be back next week to cover another week in sports news. Until then, stay safe and have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye.
Peace.
Bye, guys.